Hey everybody, welcome back to Broken Reel. I know it's been quite a while since I put out a video and I apologize for that. I know when we left off, I was doing the steampunk series where I was making some steampunk stuff and I was going to make some steampunk guns. I didn't have a chance to finish up that series and I felt kind of bad about it. And I still don't have time actually to do a build today, but I thought I would talk about some of the props that you guys see behind me. One of the very first kind of steampunk style ray guns I made was this one here, and I think at Comic-Con several years ago, and I saw the Weta booth, and they were set up, and they had their Dr. Gordbort's ray guns and stuff set up, and I just thought they were beautiful. I mean, it was excellent design by Greg Broadmoor, and at the time I would have loved to have purchased some, but I was pretty broke. Or at least I didn't have the money to spend frivolously on things like that. So it really inspired me to go home and see what I could make just using some of the junk and stuff like that I had lying around. I kind of took that challenge on and decided to make my own set of ray guns, and that actually kind of led into a whole other project that I wound up doing or working on, that I'm actually still working on today. And it's kind of been a long process, but this was one of the first ray guns that I made. The body of it is an electrical connector box, just a 2-port, and I left the top open and popped in a PVC pipe with a cap and some fake rivets, held it all together with plumber's putty, and the handle was to a cheap dollar store car chamois or something like that, that I just cut off and cut out the bottom of the box and inserted it in there, shot some screws in it, and because the electrical box is really hollow, I actually put like a toy gun trigger mount inside there with the springs and stuff like that, so it actually kind of, you could depress the trigger and it kind of works. And then just a piece of I think it was maybe aluminum strap that I used for the trigger guard and screwed it in. And then the barrel consists of a piece of conduit with some washers, conduit connector, and then the end here, this is just off of a flashlight, broken flashlight, and this part here is the stem off of, or a cartridge off of a metering like shower handle, and I had a bunch of I was replacing them all the time at my old job, and I thought they kind of looked cool and be a good part to something else, and so that was just the end of it. And then this part here is a lawnmower muffler, and it was threaded on one end, and it actually fit perfectly into the threads on the electrical connector box. So yeah, and this other parts are just pieces of plastic that I filled with some putty to kind of keep more rigid, and some pieces of tubing and wire, a wall anchor, the phony dial there that I just drew up, and yeah, I mean that's about it. It's a bunch of I got a piece of brass elbow there, but that was it. It was just kind of an organic process. I was finding parts and I thought, yeah, this look cool. I think I could use this. And I just kind of cobbled it together. And yeah, you just repurpose them and, give them another paint job, and it becomes a pretty cool looking ray gun, The second one that I did was I did a little bit more kind of freestyling, I guess, on this one. The handle I made, I cut out of a piece of wood, and then I sculpted the design sort of on the handle, the grip, with some plumber's putty. And the body of this one came from a buddy of mine was throwing away a bunch of toy bowling pins from like a child's toy bowling pin set or bowling set. And so I thought the look was perfect for kind of the design I wanted to go for, a very retro looking ray gun. And so that was, the body of it is just a kid's bowling pin with the end cut off, and a piece of pipe added to it with some connectors, and yeah, another electrical conduit connector with some tightening rods on it, some just wire, some rigid wire that I bent in for the piping, and again, just like a wall anchor, and some grease fittings that I just glued on there. And yeah, the top piece is actually another electrical connector box. And this time I just kind of glued some pieces onto it. The back is, again, some washers, just done different sizes or whatever, so it kind of gives that reduction. And the trigger actually is like a keychain that kind of depressed or whatever. It had a little spring in it. So then I sculpted the trigger itself and inserted it into the wooden handle that I made, and so it kind of presses. And then this was a piece of, I think, copper pipe that I just cut in half and opened up, and then that became the trigger guard. And then the vial back here, I had a bunch of these vials from, I think, American Science and Surplus, or most hobby shops, like practically any hobby shop you go to will have a series of like little glass bottles and stuff like that you can buy, and that's all that is. And I added some plumber's putty and a little fitting at the end, and some copper wire just to kind of give it that look, and fill it up with some Gatorade. You could, just use water and some food coloring and create any other color and stuff that you wanted. But when I was shooting, I wound up shooting a little bit of a short film with these, and I didn't have the gun totally completed yet, and I was kind of building it on set. And so then I just went down to, they had like a little cafe, and I grabbed a bottle of Gatorade, and they had, blue is what they had, so that's the color. And I thought it looked kind of cool. It was kind of a neat look. The little dial here is kind of crappy. I would actually probably replace that if I were to do anything with these again. But again, it was a fun exercise in building something completely from scratch and still kind of honing to a specific design so that it looks kind of like a cool, very vintage style, steampunk-like looking ray gun. So, I mean, this is the kind of thing like that I would hope inspires you to just go out and start building stuff. You don't need, you don't need professional materials specifically. Like just finding objects that you think look cool or interesting that you can repurpose and turn them into something else. Doing that is always a lot of fun. It's different than having a specific design and building that specific design. If you have the ability to do that and the materials to do that, that's a very important skill to have, because if you're working in the industry, then you're going to be working with directors and producers and stuff like that, and they're going to have a very specific idea of how they want the design to look, and then you have to match that exactly. But a lot of times then if you're just creating like background props and stuff like that, but they still have to look interesting and cool, and you have to build them quick and cheap, a good skill to have is kind of taking bits and pieces of other leftover parts and putting something together and making something completely new. And it kind of hones your skills, kind of keeps you sharp. When you're working with when you have access to a lot of those different materials, or if you're like pulling stuff off the shelf, you're like, actually that looks cool, I could use that for this, or that plumbing part looks kind of neat if I totally repurpose it and just use that part for this and the other part for this. And because sometimes the elements become very recognizable unless you hide it within another object and repaint it and add other things. It kind of becomes very obvious that like this is an electrical box, or that this is a piece of conduit connector and stuff. But yeah, the spacesuit. Once I built the ray guns and I kind of put the time, and I was happy with the way they turned out, I thought it'd be fun to make a little short film. And then that actually kind of escalated into a whole series that I'm kind of still working on. Hopefully one day I'll have an opportunity to share it with you guys. But this one, I know a lot of people have inquired about what the hell this giant diving helmet thing is. And actually it's a space suit. My head actually comes out, or the actor's head comes out here. And got this dome piece here. Kind of fits on like that. comes in. And so it basically comes up to like here, like my nose kind of and eyes fit in it, and so I've got this piece so I can breathe. And this is just a door stopper with a piece of plumber's putty on the tip there. But the overall design kind of started from this. I found this dome. It was an irrigation dome at a thrift store, and it's like part of a planter. And that's the irrigation dome. And it was like $2 or something like that. And I was like, I got to build a spacesuit around this dome. So initially, what I did, this was actually, I just got another planter and cut it so that it would fit like this. And then I was going to add stuff to it. I would have to have some kind of way to reduce it so that the dome would fit on top of this. And I was in the process of making this be the top part of the suit, and I realized I needed to get something that would connect the dome to it. So I was going to go to a party store and get just a cheap punch bowl and cut out the top, and then use that so I could stick my head through and put the dome on. And when I walked in, it was like early September, and they already had their Halloween stuff out. And I saw this big cauldron that they were selling for like $12. It was super cheap. And so that's all this is a cauldron that I turned upside down. I cut a hole out of the top for my head. I still bought the punch bowl and put that as the top part and cut out these pieces for my arms. And yeah, I cut out the centerpiece and added like the tap light or whatever, so it has that kind of you know, Jules Verne sort of style. It does look like a diving helmet, but that was the idea, is that it looked kind of like big and cumbersome and iron. And then like the breathing apparatus in the back is a couple of shampoo bottles with some brass piping and a little handle and a gauge that I had lying around. And yeah, once you throw some phony rivets on it and give it a paint job, it becomes kind of a cool spacesuit. Let's see if I can still put it on. Yeah, I went through like that. And then I had like a jumpsuit that I wore underneath it, and there's like this piece actually here was the torso, and that kind of fits underneath this. And then I was able to kind of rotate like this and crunch like that. Overall, it's a very cumbersome, very awkward costume to wear, but it looked kind of cool on film. If you go to my Facebook page, actually, you can see that I've got some pictures of when we were shooting the initial kind of test footage with it. And yeah, then this, actually the piece that was going to be on the top turned out to be like the cod piece that the whole piece rests on. And then I made some cheap boots and stuff. And yeah, so then that kind of became my steampunk Victorian style spacesuit. Yeah, hopefully I'll finish the project one day and I can share it with you guys. Yeah, so then I made a few more ray guns that kind of looked more, so that kind of prompted me to further the design and make some more diesel punk sort of style, or I'm a big fan of the early Flash Gordon and Buck Rogers movie serials, and so that kind of, it sort of transitioned the project into that kind of style. So using the kids' bowling pins or whatever, I made another really cheap. I just turned the bowling pin the other way and cut off the back and just added again some washers, and there's some, what I used to separate them was just a piece of aluminum tubing that I just cut into pieces and shot a screw through it to kind of hold everything tight. And then again, it's just some plumber's putty on the end there, piece of plastic with some holes drilled out on the top for the fin, and I think this is like a plastic hanger that you adhere to the back of a door or something. It was at a dollar store. And then a child's, I think it was like a squirt gun handle or something that I sanded down and repurposed with some, I added some plumber's putty and stuff like that to it to give it another shape, the overall shape, to make it look a little bit more like a 1950s kind of ray gun. Here's another one. This one, while I was filming, I decided I wanted to have kind of a 50s sort of style, or 40s, 50s kind of style ray gun. Really, it's modeled after sort of the Flash Gordon serials. There's like a pretty iconic shot of Flash Gordon and Dale Arden like this, like in camera, and he's got this ridiculous looking ray gun. And it was very much kind of modeled after that style. I also wanted to model it sort of in the vein of like a Thompson submachine gun. Sort of like this kind of element here kind of came through with the handle and everything. But yeah, I threw it together in about an hour and a half using some bits and pieces that I had. This is like a thrift store. I think it's some kind of like hand espresso machine or something like that. I don't know. Yeah, what does that say there? Shake well before using. Okay, I don't know. But yeah, so that's what the body of it was. And then the back is a hair dryer. It was all chromed pieces. I used chrome pieces because I wanted to have that finish. And instead of chroming it myself, I just used bits and pieces of stuff that I had that already had a chrome kind of finish to it. This is just an old shower rod, I think. And this is a shower head. And the body of it was just cheap wood that I cut the handle and stuff into. And then the top is, yeah, just a piece of plastic, again, that I just cut and shaped real quick. But yeah, overall it gives kind of a neat, very iconic sort of retro sci-fi look. And it kind of has a neat sort of feel, too. On screen, it looked really neat. The one problem was I shot a lot of green screen stuff, and when you have stuff that's very reflective, it's really hard to key. So I would recommend possibly dirtying it up a bit if you're going to shoot stuff doing green screen. Let's see what else. I've got a few other ones. Maybe I'll save those for another time. This episode's already gotten probably a little bit longer than you have any patience for. So, oh, actually, you know what? One more thing I actually am going to talk about. This helmet. I've gotten a lot of people talk about. They're like, dude, what is that Rocketeer style helmet that you have there? And again, it's all for the same project, and it was really, I know it has kind of that Rocketeer look, but the Rocketeer helmet and that whole design was very closely modeled after a lot of other kind of movie serial type characters, like Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon and Spy Smasher and stuff like that. And really, this design that I used was modeled after a Buck Rogers comic book, and it had this very specific type of look. I gave it the paint job that kind of lends itself a little bit more to that Rocketeer kind of style. But yeah, it's a very Art Deco kind of piece. And again, it was super cheap. I wanted to make the helmet. I had the idea for the design in my head, and so I went to a costume shop, and they had a Centurion helmet, like a Roman Centurion helmet. And I was like, that's pretty close. I think that's close enough, or as close as I'm going to get to the helmet I want. And it's really cheap. You know, I was trying to build it with very little to no money. So I think that the Centurion helmet was maybe like $12, and it was really made out of kind of like a cheap plastic. But when I heated it, I could actually kind of reform it a little bit. So I wound up cutting off the back of the helmet that kind of swooped out. I didn't like that design, and I didn't want it to look too much like a Centurion helmet, and I took the crest off the top with the plume and everything, and then replaced it with, again, just a piece of plastic that I cut, and then to give it some texture or layers, I just added another piece here that was made out of craft foam. And then the earpieces are just craft foam, cut into circles and then reshaped, kind of give it that rounded kind of feel. And the back is craft foam. I have a kind of just several pieces that I glued, and that sort of reduces the helmet, kind of brings it back in and makes it a little bit more form-fitting. And then again, yeah, using some craft or some, this is a foam mat actually that I built the jaw piece out of. It's kind of falling apart now, but it would snap in like that. And I had the chin piece actually has a elastic strap added to it so I could talk and stuff like that. It wasn't restricted, but it also was still held its shape and its form. And then I could also talk and it would move around and stuff like that. Whew. Yeah, I think that's about it for today. I've got a few more pieces and stuff like that, but I'll probably go into more of that next time. Or hopefully, when the project kind of ramps up again, maybe I'll show you guys a little bit more of the actual project and some of the footage that I shot. So yeah, I don't know. That's it. That's all I got time for today. But hopefully next time, very soon, I will have another episode where I build something. So once again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.